Welcome to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. We're applying the mind of Christ to the matters of the day so that you can connect the eternal with the everyday and get ready to head out into the world that God so loves in ways that honor Jesus. So let's get started. This is The Reconnect.
Encouraging you to live as an ambassador of God's kingdom in the world.
This is The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge on Faith Radio.
If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, arms out wide. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions.
Hello, my friend. It's Friday, the 10th of July. I'm Carmen LaBerge. You're listening to The Reconnect. In the mid-1970s, a band called Aerosmith released a song entitled Walk This Way. I don't remember the mid-70s version. I do, however, distinctly remember the 1986 version. That's the year I graduated from high school, and they did this collaboration with a band called Run DMC, and they released or re-released Walk This Way. And it became wildly popular. And I'm not recommending the song, but I will tell you that as soon as I say the words "walk this way," I can hear it in my head. And that's unusual for me because I'm not really a music person. It is a song about teenage lust and sexual experimentation and following the lead of people who frankly will lead you down paths of destruction to do things that are morally wrong. Just walk this way, the chorus encourages. Walk this way. Talk this way. And learning to walk and talk are actually deeply intertwined developmental milestones. When we start walking, when we start talking, we are patterning our lives after someone else. If you can understand what I'm saying right now, it's because someone before me spoke to you in a language we call English. Not the Queen's English, just good old-fashioned American English. Somebody taught me how to talk. And somebody taught you and taught me how to walk. The way we walk, the way we carry ourselves. Someone literally taught you how to walk and talk. You are following someone's lead. The pace at which you walk is something that you learned, your gait, so to speak. And you are learning a pattern of speech and words and tone and, yes, literally, how to walk step by step from someone. Walk this way, talk this way. I want you to think for a moment. I want you to make the transition here with me to discipleship. Learning to walk and talk as a disciple of Jesus. It means walking so closely with him that our feet fall where his feet fall. We don't get ahead of him. We don't lag behind him. We walk step by step with him under a shared yoke or mantle, in step with the Spirit at the pace of grace, walking with Jesus. I talk about your journey with Jesus. Are you walking with him? When Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me," he's talking about the way the rabbi would throw his stole over the person next to them. You literally can't walk ahead of him or lag behind him. You have to walk with him in order to be under that shared yoke or mantle. Paul talks about it as walking in step with the Spirit at the pace of grace. That's what came to mind when I read today's Growing Your Faith verse of the day. And so where in the Word are you today? We want to let God speak to us through that which he's already spoken, his living and eternal word. Our Growing Your Faith verse of the day is Proverbs chapter 10, verse 9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely. But who takes crooked paths, he will be exposed. As a Christian, the way that I take, not just the direction that I go, but the steps where my feet fall as a Christian the way that I follow is the way of Jesus. He is the way, and yes, the truth and the way of life. Jesus literally invites us to follow him. Come, follow me, step by step. You're going to have to learn to walk and talk with a different rhythm, with a different pattern, at a different pace. Jesus is not walking or talking in the way of the world. No, he is walking and talking in the way of the kingdom. The wisdom of Solomon in Proverbs 10:9 parallels the straight and narrow path that Jesus describes in Matthew chapter 7. Enter through the narrow gate, Jesus says. Wide is the gate and broad is the road that lead to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the way that leads to life, and only a few find it. Jesus calls for a narrow gate that requires discipline and focused intention and strict adherence to God's standards rather than the wide ways, the Aerosmith walk this way, of the culture. Proverbs 10:9, whoever walks in integrity walks securely. The one who takes a crooked path will be exposed. Both paths, the path of integrity described in Proverbs 10:9, the narrow way that Jesus describes in Matthew chapter 7, it requires a moral realignment. You can't slide through with a compromised or divided heart. That's where the word integrity comes in. Proverbs 10:9 uses the word integrity. Whoever walks in integrity. What does that mean? What does it mean to walk in integrity? It means that the original Hebrew there, I think that maybe that's where we should start. The original Old Testament Hebrew word that is translated integrity, in Hebrew it's just Tom, which if your name is Tom, just know that in Hebrew your name means integrity. It means completeness, fullness, moral innocence, righteousness. It's rooted, our English word integrity is rooted in a Latin word that's the same word we use for integer, a whole number. It's not a fraction, it's the whole thing. A person of integrity is not a person of a divided heart, not a fractional Christian who acts one way at church or talks one way at church and then another way on the proverbial playground. No, a person of integrity is the exact same person, an integrated person, an integer, a whole number, the exact same person in the dark as they are in the light. Same person at work and at home, same person at church and on the highway. Integrity. Walk this way. Talk this way. The way of Jesus. With integrity. An integrated life. All the way home to the Father's house. Our friend Thann Bennett is going to join us next. He is the host of The Equipped, author of the Equipped newsletter. We're going to talk about where our lives are built, because one thing is built upon another. There are layers upon layers upon layers of life. And so we're going to talk about that next. You're listening to The Reconnect. Our friend Thann Bennett is here from The Equipped. You can read the Equipped newsletter over at theequippednewsletter.com. Hey, Thann, welcome back.
Carmen, good morning. How are we doing this morning?
It's great. It's pouring down rain where I live. How about you?
Not at the moment, but that is one of the first times in the last, I don't know, feels like about a month, but 4 or 5 days. We've got 2 trees down over our driveway from all of the rain that's happened in the last several days. So not at the moment, but I feel you.
Yeah. Those roots, they get weakened when that ground gets soft, and the big tops of those trees just pull them over in the wind. It's a process. So let's talk a little bit about foundations. I am looking at the Equipped newsletter, and the piece in The True called Built on the Site. And I loved this. I love the reality that life is layered. We are always building something on top of something else. And so walk us into this conversation.
Yeah, this is a conversation, Carmen, that I've been thinking about for several weeks now, really since our oldest daughter and I toured Washington College in Central Maryland, Eastern Maryland, really. By the way, I cannot believe that I'm at the stage of life where my daughter is touring college. Like, how does that happen? But she's a swimmer, and so local colleges that have swimming programs have been inviting her to tour their campuses. And I was fascinated by Washington College's campus. They claim to be the oldest college in Maryland. Now, St. John's also claims it, so it kind of depends on how you look at it. But they were chartered in 1782. And there is one particular building. There's a set of three: Middle Hall, East Hall, and West Hall. But Middle Hall is built on the foundation of the original campus building that was established in 1782. It burned down in 1827. And as we were touring the site, the host said something like, George Washington helped lay the foundation. Now, I have to admit, I came back to him later and I was like, do you mean like physically? Was he physically? He's like, well, no, he gave money, right? He gave money and permission to use his name. But the story sort of goes that George Washington helped lay the foundation. But the point remains that this foundation is something that has stood sturdy for more than almost 300 years now. And I kept coming back to that concept as he was showing us the newer buildings and the nicer buildings and the better facilities. And I also was thinking about my truck, Carmen, because my truck has 240,000 miles on it, and I want it to go another 240,000. But there's a reason that I know it won't. And the reason I know it won't is because everything that is created, at least at human hands, has a finite, useful life. And when you're talking about foundations and buildings, foundations have a much longer life cycle than do the structures that are built above ground. And so in the case of Middle Hall at Washington College, when the building above ground burned down because the foundation was not burned, it could be rebuilt on. And I just have been thinking about this in terms of people and souls. And, if you think about the Sir Isaac Newton quote, we stand on the shoulders of giants. You think about Hebrews 12, where the believers who have gone before us are called a great cloud of witnesses. And Carmen, there is such a rich blessing in being able to stand on the shoulders of believers that have gone before us. Now, I realize that when you talk about family structures, not everyone is as blessed as I am. I am privileged and I am blessed to stand on a foundation of a godly heritage. But I would tell you, you've only got to go 2 generations back for that foundation to be in shambles, for that foundation to have literally been burned to the ground. And I know that is true for many people who are listening. And that is what gives such great comfort, such great relief to think about the ultimate cornerstone that we as Jesus followers should be building our lives on is, of course, the foundation of Jesus Christ. But the final thought I want to leave with folks is that foundation, that cornerstone was rejected by the people of Jesus's time. Psalm 118:22, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And Carmen, the reason the people of Jesus's time rejected him as the foundation is because he was not content to build on their foundation. He had this radical insistence that they actually had to leave that foundation behind and that he was going to replace them. It was no longer enough to have, religious rituals. It was no longer enough to be a part of the religious class. He was going to replace them as the foundation. And the hope that gives us today is no matter what your family foundation looks like, no matter what foundation you have been left behind, you can build on the foundation that has replaced that one and that will last forever. And it's the foundation of the rock of Jesus Christ.
I have a couple of examples for you where really historically old foundations. One in Sicily. So there was a foundation of a temple to Athena that goes back to like the 5th century BC. But the foundation was used to build the Cathedral of Syracuse in Sicily that still stands today. And I like the redemption of a foundation that was corrupt, that was to something other than the glory of God. And the same would be true at the Basilica of San Clemente in Laterno in Rome, because it was a pagan temple, and then it became a Christian basilica, and they built it, on top of something else. And then I think the oldest foundation that we know of that has a building on it today was a temple that was constructed by Marcus Agrippa. So that'd be like 3rd century BC. And then, finished by Emperor Hadrian in like 120 AD. But that building has been in continuous use for like 2,000 years and functions today as a Catholic church, and it has since 609. 609. But I was saying, like,
Amazing.
You brought to mind, I mean, I was thinking about the times and the places where, I've had the privilege of traveling internationally, and like where you get to go beneath a modern city to the city that lies beneath, and then to the city that lies beneath that. Like we continue to build layer upon layer upon layer, and it's very sobering. It's a very sobering reminder that life has a span, and even whole people groups have a lifespan. Cultures and empires have lifespans, but the kingdom of God endures forever, and I want to build my life on the firm foundation of Jesus.
Amen. Just one final thought on this, Carmen. Your conversation to open the broadcast was about following and walking in a certain way. We live in a culture that says lead, chart a new path, do a new thing, build a new thing. And Scripture actually calls us to new things, certainly, but it consistently calls us not to charting a leading path. It calls us to charting a following path and to follow well. And what you are describing is why it does that. Because if we follow in the steps of Jesus, if we follow in the model of Jesus, we're building on a foundation that the world can't take away. I mean, the trees that I'm looking at outside my office window that have fallen over the driveway, those root balls, Carmen, they're like, I don't know, 15, 20 feet wide, but they're about a foot deep. When you build on the rock of Jesus Christ, when you follow in his ways, the roots run deep. And when the storms of life come, you can stand. And so, culture is going to tell you to lead out. Only lead if you're leading as a result of following Jesus. And he has said, chart this path.
Yeah, maybe you could give a little thought to Brel's first steps and first words at some point in the walk this way, talk this way conversation, as she, as you begin to think about her embarking on a life where she's, walking more and more and more beyond the scope of your moment by moment and day by day, shepherding of her heart and stewarding of her life. And so that'll be my encouragement to you. We have to take a brief break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Thann Bennett, host of The Equipped, author of the Equipped newsletter. We're going to give a little bit of attention to the question of freedom and why we spend so much time talking about it and reveling in it. That's up next here on The Reconnect.
Psst, have you heard the news? Listening just got better with the new and improved Faith Radio app. No more restrictions, no more static, no more missing your favorite shows. Now, listen when you want, where you want, and share with everyone. When you need hope, encouragement, Jesus, it's right there on your phone. Text the word app to 877-933-1037 2484 and follow the link or search Faith Radio Network in your app store.
Whatever else you're doing today, you are going to want to go visit the Equipped newsletter. It's free, and you're going to want to go and get it, theequippednewsletter.com, and you're going to want to go to the Why Freedom post. And, of course, I want you to read the whole thing, but mostly I want you to scroll to the very bottom because this week's photograph, this week's The Beautiful, is a wonderful personal story about relentless patience and the adoption of feral cats. But it is a photograph of Thann's youngest daughter. And it is, if you've ever seen that image of Jesus holding the little lamb, it's very reminiscent of that, minus the leather gloves. So, Thann, I want to talk about freedom, but I want to scroll down to the beautiful, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about hope and the adoption of these kittens, because it's just like a version of a Friday Farm Report.
Yeah, I really love this week's edition of The Beautiful, Carmen, and not just because hope is in it, but maybe primarily because hope is in it. The leather gloves that are pictured as she is snuggling what looks to be like this most loving, beautiful, cute little kitten. I'm telling you, Carmen, that kitten is a tiger. That kitten will rip your face off. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Hope was promised a kitten for her birthday. She ended up with 3, and none of them are kittens. They are all tigers. And there have been moments where trying to get that feral nature out of them has been pretty discouraging for Hope. But what she has done is she showed up with leather gloves every day. She showed up with leather gloves and just sat with them for weeks. They did not even let her touch them. Now, as you can see in the picture, they are starting to relent, although I have continued to remind her to keep her face away from them for now because they're still quite feral. But what a picture. What a picture of what God has done to us. We have not only been unwelcoming of his love, Carmen, we've been hostile to it. We've been enemies of it. We've been opponents of it. Our sin has pushed it away, and yet he has pursued us with relentless, radical love, and he has been waiting for us to turn to him. So I love this image. There's a descriptive story that goes along with it, but Carmen, I honestly think you can just take in the image and apply it to so many things in your life, in my life, that have to do with how we respond to God's love and how he continues to pursue us.
Oh, and we are, most of us, much more like feral cats than like little lambs. Like,
no question.
It's such a, I mean, yeah, it's a fantastic, please pass our encouragement along to Hope, but our gratitude to Brooke for capturing the picture and then for the words that you've attached to it as well. Thank you so much. It is, the beautiful this week is genuinely beautiful. I want you guys to avail yourself of it. It's at theequippednewsletter.com. We're happy to send you the direct link on the text line 877-933-2484. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to share your Why Freedom reflection.
So, Carmen, I'll be brief. I know we're coming up on the end of our time here together, but probably everyone listening, or at least very close to it, as we led up to the 250th anniversary or birthday of America, heard at least part of Patrick Henry's famous phrase. They probably heard "Give me liberty" or "Give me death." Right? There's this concept, at least in the West, that life is not worth living if it is not embedded in freedom. But I want to read the full context. It's just 2 lines from Patrick Henry's speech. This happened at Virginia's second convention as they were deciding whether or not to send delegates to the Continental Congress that would formally establish the United States. Here's what he said leading up to that line. He said, "Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." Carmen, we think about freedom as something worth risking our life for. And it is, But the freedom that Jesus has given us is so much more than an earthly freedom that we think about as one that is secured by man's laws. And if we ask that question, why freedom, when we turn to the pages of Scripture to answer, I would just point your listeners to Galatians chapter 5. I'll give you two quick thoughts, but then I would really encourage you to read all of Galatians 5 today and lay it against this idea that we've been coming through over the last couple of weeks about freedom and about the quarter millennia that the American experience has been leaning into the idea of freedom. Galatians 5:1 says that you were created for freedom. Now, again, this is more than earthly freedom. This is a freedom from sin. This is a freedom bought by the redemption of Jesus Christ. But you were created for freedom, and that's why that desire for it wells at the very core of your being. But if you read a little bit later in the chapter, especially verse 13, you find that freedom is not for yourself. You don't pursue freedom so that you can attain it and then retain it. It says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Carmen, freedom is a wonderful thing, but it's not for you, or at least not just simply to be held by you. It is meant to be spent and poured out for others. And the final encouragement I would give is the reason I have such confidence that that is the purpose for freedom is, again, to look at the life of Jesus Christ. When he walked earth, he had all of the freedom possible because it came from the Father. But how did he use it? He poured it out on the cross for you and for me. So freedom is a wonderful thing, but we are not to be the final possessors of it. We are to use it and pour it out for the benefit of others.
I think the for freedom, we are free. Like, right? It is not just for anything that God has freed us from the bondage of sin or the penalty of death. Like, your freedom is for a purpose, and it's not just for licentiousness. I mean, it's not liberty in the whatever I want definition of the term. It's again, I mean, I think that back to earlier images of a bridled horse. Like, we are best when we are willingly submitting to God's authority. I mean, I want to be free in the ways in which God has set me free, right? I don't want a freedom that is a freedom to just sin. I want a freedom that is life-giving and full and rich and blessed.
We use terms like independence and liberty and freedom interchangeably, right? But think about it. You can be independent and be anything but free. Actually, being free, having liberty in Christ, requires you to actually surrender your independence to a total dependence on the Lord Jesus Christ. So I understand why the words get conflated, but they are distinct. And we were created to be free. And in a physical sense, we were given independence, and we were given that for the purpose of actually being dependent and pouring ourselves out for others.
Oh, that really is really helpful. I think that most of us have probably not sat long and thought about the distinct nature of those terms and how we tend to use them interchangeably, that they do have distinct but related meanings. It's really, really helpful. Hey, if you want to read this for yourself so that you can then in turn share it with others, it is the True in this week's edition of the Equipped newsletter. You can find it at theequippednewsletter.com. You can also listen to the Equipped here on the Faith Radio Network and at myfaithpodcast.com. Thann, as always, thank you for being with us here today on the Reconnect.
Super grateful, Carmen. We love you.
Yeah, that is mutual. Give Hope our encouragement, because that is a worthy task that she has undertaken.
Will do.
So good. Hey, do you know the song, Be Careful Little Eyes What You See? Who is the guard at your eye gate? Have you ever thought about your eyes as a gate? The Bible says the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. That's from Matthew 6:22. I want you to think about your eyes as a gateway to your soul, as a gate, so to speak. What you watch, what you behold with your eyes, what you scroll through, it all enters into you. So are you guarding your eye gate? We're going to talk about what our kids are seeing with Chris Martin up next. You're listening to The Reconnect. Careful, little eyes, what you see. What are you seeing on social media? And what is a 13-year-old seeing on Snapchat in a given week? That is one of the subjects taken up by our friend Chris Martin on his Terms of Service Substack. Chris, welcome back to The Reconnect.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So what does a 13-year-old see on Snapchat in a normal week?
Sure. So this week, in their After Babel newsletter, Jonathan Haidt and Zach Roush had a guest post on from Brooke Istuk, and she helps lead an organization called the Heat Initiative, where they research various topics like the one we're about to discuss. And they recently did a study on what teenagers see and experience on Snapchat. So a quick primer, if you're not aware of what Snapchat is. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have at least heard of it, even if they've not listened to it themselves. But Snapchat is a smartphone messaging app. You can only really use it on smartphones. There's no really using it on, perhaps on a tablet, but no using it on your computer. And it's a glorified instant messaging service. At least that's how it started. And the appeal for Snapchat in the initial days, kind of its distinctive feature, was that messages disappeared after sending. So they were temporary video, image, or text messages that you send between yourself and others on the app. And that was before, I mean, a lot of apps have this kind of feature now, at least have the ability to turn on this kind of feature, but that was like Snapchat's thing. It was very ephemeral. Now, obviously, when you hear of an app like that, an app designed and marketed specifically for teenage use, you understand how that can go sideways pretty quickly when you have a bunch of young people sending messages to one another of various kinds that ostensibly disappear upon receipt when they're received and viewed. And that was actually in the original design. The original idea of Snapchat, in part, was to have it be used for things you wouldn't want people to keep around of any nature. That was kind of part of the pitch. And Evan Spiegel, who created the app, kind of used that as a keystone idea. Like, yeah, you send things to your friends you don't necessarily want them to be having on their phone. Use this app instead of your messaging service or whatever. So fast forward, Snapchat's much bigger than it was when it launched, obviously, and it has all kinds of other features now. Rather than just messaging people that you know, you can connect with all kinds of people you don't know. There's kind of a stories function like there is on Instagram. There's all kinds of extra features. In fact, Snapchat created the stories function before Instagram did, and Instagram just kind of stole it from them, as is typical. But here's the thing. Snapchat is one of the most popular social media platforms among the youngest of social media users. A lot of teenagers that I've spoken with over the years, and I've been out of youth ministry for a few years now, but when I was in student ministry, Snapchat and YouTube were the two most common social media apps. YouTube was kind of the TV of the teenagers I was working with. It wasn't an app that they were using to connect with other people. It was the app that they were using to consume entertainment. And then their most popular and most common social media app among teenagers was Snapchat. The study from the Heat Initiative that came out this week, or was shared this week, tells us some pretty disturbing things about teenagers and what they see on Snapchat. Here are just a few stats for you. So teenagers under the age of 18, so not 18, 19-year-olds, but 17 and younger, have had an experience like these in the last year. 36% of them have had unwanted messages or contact from another user. 31% of them have had people bullying them or being mean to them in posts or other messages. 25% have received sexually suggestive or content or messages. 18% hate speech, racist, or discriminatory messages, and on it goes. 8% got graphically violent or bloody content. But then here's maybe even more disturbing. That's in a year, which a year's a long time. It's a lot of Snapchat use. What about weekly? In a week, 32% of minor Snapchat users receive unsafe content or messages, which are the ones that I just listed, the ones that are unwanted from somebody they don't know, bullying, sexually suggestive. 32% are getting that kind of content weekly, which is just horrifying to me. And as I read this, I've been on your program plenty of times and have written too many words, you could say, about social media and how we need to keep young people off it. And it has been a while since I've got as angry as I've got reading this piece. I encourage you to go read it. Anybody listening, afterbabble.com, you can find it's one of their most recent posts, if not their most recent. Because beyond the stats, which just shared some stats with you, and they're horrifying, but you've probably heard a bunch of horrifying social media stats over the years from myself or others. But maybe most concerning in the study that they've published and in the post that we're talking about here are just the examples that are shared, the screenshots that are shared of, like, they set up a dummy account pretending to be a 13-year-old. And the kinds of content that this new Snapchat user 13-year-old was served with the app knowing nothing about this 13-year-old was really concerning to me. Drug use, sexual content, the 13-year-old account getting unwanted messages from people it doesn't know. I mean, it just started happening pretty routinely and pretty immediately when they set up this dummy account for their study. And so I would encourage you to go read it. I think it's enlightening, and it just reminds me, as I have two little girls, that, they'll get social media when they're 35.
So and I would just like to, first of all, thank you, Chris, for alerting us to this. And I think that the be careful little eyes what you see is serious and significant. Here's my sort of like the growing edge of my concern. It's one thing for you to manage when your girls have access to technology and social media. It's another thing for them to be with kids who have access, who are exposed, who will then expose them. And I'm thinking about a friend who has shared a prayer concern with me. Her kids are, they sort of like range in age from little to now like 6th grade. But when they go over to this other couple, they have friends in their small group, and their whole small group gets together at one of these friends' houses, and all the kids just go to the basement together, right? So it's like 3 or 4 families, and all their kids are in the basement together. And she shared with me, like, I realized that my kids are being exposed to things through those other kids that we don't want our kids exposed to. We have not exposed our kids to, and we don't want our kids exposed. So can you just, as a parent, like, talk a little bit about how you're navigating that? How do you navigate who your kids are with? Because every family doesn't share the same standards.
Yeah, for sure. And our daughters are quite young, so we haven't had to face this battle too much yet. Though with our youngest being in kindergarten last year and now going into 1st grade, we have had to have some of our first conversations about, hey, I know your friends are talking about watching X or Y. We're not going to watch that for these reasons or whatever. We have had to start having those conversations. And so I get what you're saying. I think that for the parent out there, and I say this again as a parent who's not quite had to cross this bridge yet, but I know it's coming. I think recognizing you're not going to protect your kid from everything is just kind of the first step of this process. There's wisdom, obviously, in keeping your kid off social media for as long as possible. I think there's great wisdom in that. But the minute we start to try to protect our kids every step of the way in every single environment. I think there are probably a handful of problems with that, or obstacles we will encounter that will come our way when we try to do that. But I think it's A, unrealistic, and B, a wonderful opportunity for us to trust in the goodness and sovereignty of God, quite frankly. I think that when we recognize, because here's the thing, and I know we want to protect our 10-year-old kids more than we recognize we can protect our 20-year-old kids. I get that. But our children are going to experience, at whatever age, all kinds of harmful things, unfortunately, because of the brokenness of the world. Whether it's a bully in 3rd grade, seeing something on somebody's phone they shouldn't see in 6th grade, or getting robbed when they're 18, or any number, they're going to experience awful things. And I think we run into trouble as parents when we just try to protect them from everything, rather than doing what we can to equip them for how to handle those sorts of things when they come. So rather than trying to protect our kid from ever experiencing something like that, which I think is maybe a worthy concern, but an impossible aspiration, what we can do is try to equip our children with tools for how to handle situations like that, with knowledge of how to flee things like you were describing, things they shouldn't see or engage with or whatever else, rather than trying to do all we can to keep them from ever experiencing it, which I think just ends in heartbreak and frustration. I think what we can do is try to equip them with the tools for how to handle those kinds of situations, and give them the kind of relationship that we can to provide fertile ground for having conversations about those things when they happen, so that they don't feel shamed about that, or that they don't feel like they can't talk with us about that. And that was another stat from the survey we won't share right now, but another stat showed that a disturbingly small percentage of kids were talking to a trusted parent or adult about what they encountered on Snapchat. And so I think having an environment where our kids, or any kids who are in our care, whether we're a teacher or whatever else, where kids can come talk to a parent or a trusted adult about these things is a huge, huge factor.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a very, very brief break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Chris Martin. Yes, we're happy to send you the direct link to afterbabel.com, where this Snapchat conversation is posted. We'll do that on the text line, 877-933-2484. You're listening to The Reconnect. Just take the first step. Just take the first step. I mean, every journey begins with a first step, right? And if you want to hike to the top of a mountain, or if you just want to, make it around the block, it all starts with a first step. Just take one step, a step out the door. Now, the same holds true in the journey of discipleship with Jesus. A relationship with Jesus actually begins with a first step. Sometimes taking that first step can be really hard, right? Well, if you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, just take the first step. Text the word faith to 41224. Our friends at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association are going to hold your hand as you take the first step or the next step in your walk of faith with Jesus. They're going to help you walk with him and talk with him. Take the first step of faith today. Text the word faith to 41224. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Those are really, really good reminders for us as we engage on social media. Our kids, our grandkids, our nieces, our nephews, the kids in the youth group at our church, they are being exposed, even overexposed to all kinds of things on social media. We're taking Snapchat specifically into view here with our friend Chris Martin today. What does a 13-year-old see on Snapchat in a normal week? We're going to send you the link to this at afterbabel.com. It includes a link to the HEAT Initiative study or report that is very, very helpful on this topic. Chris, as you're talking about the things that our kids are exposed to or overexposed to, and here I might lean into your experience in youth ministry, how do you you cultivate the kind of relationship where students or young people, kids and grandkids would share with us what they are being exposed to without shame? Because at some level, like, that's the challenge. We are not seeing what they're seeing because at some level they know it's not stuff they should be looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really tough. I think when I was working in student ministry more closely than I am now, I think that the teens that I saw who could handle this sort of thing in the most healthy way, handle a lot of them weren't on social media, which is a credit to their parents, but a lot of them were too. Like a number of them, it might have been 50-50. I don't know. I never really took a poll. But regardless of whether it's social media or something else that they're encountering, the teens that I saw, the young people in general that I saw who kind of had the healthiest relationship to this sort of thing, were those who had regular communication with their parents about such things. I don't know. It's pretty general, but like the kids who I think struggled with this sort of thing the most came from homes who would have kind of a culture of a shame. Maybe that's too strong, or call it legalistic. I don't know what you want to call it. Rather conservative homes who tried to protect and never prepared, I guess, is maybe one way to put it. The assumption was maybe from a parent's side, oh, my kid would never engage in that. My kid would never do that, because they're kind of assuming that maybe their kid is a really good kid and the kid wouldn't seek that out. But that doesn't mean their kid's not going to encounter content that's objectionable or engage in things offline with friends that are objectionable, but they just happen to be there, or they just happen to download Snapchat. They downloaded Snapchat to connect with friends about an upcoming event they were going to, and that's the way the kids were talking about it. But then they came across this content totally unintentionally. But now, because they know their parents would be upset by that, they are like, oh, there's like this, not this culture of grace. There's this culture of kind of holiness and righteousness that doesn't allow for this kind of thing. Now they're like, oh, did I do something wrong because I came across this explicit content or dangerous content, whatever form? I'm not going to tell my parents about it because they're just going to be mad. They're not going to understand that I didn't even look for it. They're going to take my phone away or whatever. And so I think the where this comes in is building a culture in the home of grace and openness, and not a culture of kind of shame and closeness.
Yeah, I think we have to figure out how to cultivate standards or help our kids, the kids who are in our spheres of influence, help them understand that we do have different standards in the culture. This is something that the culture is actively engaged in, and we are making a choice to not be actively engaged in it. Like we're focused on different things. All right, Chris, we got to leave it right there. We're completely out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Reconnect.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we'll send you the direct link on the text line so that you can continue this conversation with those you love. 877-933-2484. We got another hour together up next. Thanks for listening to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. Let us know how we can help you more fully reconnect the eternal with the everyday. We want to walk with you throughout your journey of discipleship. So let's connect. You can text us at 877-933-2484 or connect with us online at myfaithradio.com and on all our social media. I look forward to connecting with you as we each seek to reconnect the eternal with the everyday.